Okay, well, hello everyone. I'm Kurt Sundell. I've been working with George for, gosh, I don't know, 2.5 years now, George, something like that. And so I'll be going over the, I think I'm slotted just for the hands-on parts of this course. And so hopefully you all had a chance to download and test and open the different programs. Those are all in the Google Drive link that we sent. If anybody's having troubles with those, I'll be sticking around. After this module, we'll have lunch. So it'll be 12:15. It'll be about 1:15 on the East Coast when I'm done with this, because I'm going to go for about an hour here. And so we'll have I don't know, maybe a 45-minute lunch, whatever we decide. But I'll stick around at that time to handle any technical issues with opening the different programs, getting set up. So I'll be here. So if you didn't get them working, then we'll try to resolve those issues then. And this is all recorded, so if you have to go back to the data reduction part, that'll be just fine, I think. And I'm always available for email anyway, so yeah, you can always ask me directly. Cool. So I'm gonna, Sarah, maybe you can help me out here by watching the chat and tell me to slow down, or probably not gonna need me to speed up, but I think I'll need a throttle as we go through this, because I'm not gonna be looking at the chat. I'm just gonna be looking at what I'm attempting to present here. So yeah, you can be the governor here.
That's good.
Okay, so great. Yeah, also any questions, feel free to speak up if you want to say anything. The chat's been pretty good so far, and Sarah's right on top of it. So either way is fine with me. Cool. So usually we'd be in a classroom, we'd be walking around, interacting, but we'll see how this goes for a hands-on. It went well yesterday, so I'm optimistic here. Also, I'm looking up here. My screen is dead, so if I'm looking off into space, it's just because I have to look at an external monitor, so it might be a little weird for you, but anyways, so go ahead and go into the short course materials here. This is just downloaded from the link we sent, and this is everything. So if you have a Mac, you'll want to find the different applications in the Mac folder. So the 4 different programs. If you're using a PC, then they'll be in there as executables. And if you are daring enough to try it in Matlab, I'll show you how to do that as we go and which files to open. If I don't, just remind me to. Cool, so I'm gonna start off with data reduction here. And so we're gonna dive into a new program that we've developed here at the Arizona Laserchron Center, HCalcML. So simply just open that. This can live anywhere on your machine. Typically in the Laserchron lab, we just have it sitting on the desktop, or we run in Matlab. It's exactly the same interface that you'll see in either case. And if it's your first time opening it, I caution you, please be patient. If it's the first time your computer's accessing the runtime that's needed to drive these different applications, it takes it a couple of minutes to find it the first time, but then it's established that link and the other programs will be a little faster for opening. Okay. So HCalcML, what we've tried to do here, because we do a lot of different things at the Laserchron Center, is package everything into kind of a one-stop shop. So George talked about the different kinds of mass specs that we use. We have a multi-collector, we have a single collector. Then there's some sample prep. So we have these different acquisition tools. And then there's analysis tools. So things that, after your measurement session, you want to look at, say, a Concordia plot, or you want to look at an age distribution plot. And we've built all of this in. So just for example, you can open up a distribution plotter and you have that kind of at your disposal. Let's see. Before I dive into the reduction, I just want to show you where you can find all of this stuff. If you ever don't have this link again, I will leave it live on our Google Drive for as long as I can. But GitHub is where you can always find the latest. So this is kind of my academic GitHub, call it. And so everything that I'm involved in developing or I develop myself is all open source on here. You can go to HCalcML. You can always find the the latest code, and it's all just open source. This is how, this is kind of the philosophical thing for us at the Lasertron Center. We want everything out there and open. Anybody can use whatever we do pretty much. We're pretty transparent. The latest releases will always be here. And you can get executables, applications, and that sort of thing. If you can't find any of that, you can just go to my academic website. And this is something that's still in the works, but if you don't feel like navigating GitHub, I've tried to put more obvious links on my academic website. I will include these links in the chat, or Sarah can do that for me. She'd be so kind. Thank you. Yeah, so everything's here, and this is for all of the different stuff that we've developed at Lasertron Center or that I've been in part of years before this. Cool. So we're going to dive into one of these data reduction modules. So we're going to use the new time resolved. So on the left here, the second one down, uranium, thorium, lead, time resolved. The data that we will load into this is it's not readable by these other ones. So the mass specs, depending on how you run your analysis, will give slightly different looking results. So this one is specific to the time resolved. So make sure you click that one. Sarah, was there a question? I thought you. Okay, great. And so here's the main interface, and most of the data reduction interfaces look somewhat similar to this. And what we're trying to do here is basically put everything in one screen that you'd ever want to see during a measurement session or after the session, when you're just interrogating your data and doing some quality control. And so what we're going to do is load some data. So I'm going to do that by clicking this button in the top left. It says select input folder. So go ahead and click that. And then you have to find it. And so I have it on my desktop with all kinds of fun stuff on the desktop. So it should be in your GSA short course materials. And I've made the input all caps, so hopefully it's easy to find. So what we're going to do, all of the data that we're going to play with today is all in this input folder. We're going to go into the HCalc ML data reduction, and we're going to select 120. And 120, I'll explain what that means in just a moment once we get some data plotted on the screen.
Kurt, I think we have a few stragglers. So we're going into our HCalc ML, and then they're clicking on the new data reduction. Is that correct?
I'll go back. So you can see my cursor?
Yep.
Great, yeah. So this second one here, so uranium, thorium, lead, time resolved.
And then once you're in that, you'll pull up this window that Kurt's looking at now, and then you're going to pull in this data.
Yep, and so once you select, you click on select input folder, what you're going to want to do is don't navigate all the way in because you can't select anything. So you can't select anything. You can't select the two individual files that you need to do the reduction. So go back one, click on just the folder and press open. The tendency is always to go in and click all the way in, then you really can't go anywhere. So go ahead and stop at just the folder, click on the folder itself and press open. Maybe I'll hold up there. That might be a good spot. I'm seeing a nod from Sarah. You're the only one in my screen, in my top screen right now, so I just said Sarah and HCalc ML. So I think this is going to work well. So just give me a thumbs up when you think we're ready. Tall order right now.
So there's a couple of people asking whether they can do it directly in Matlab, and I know you said possibly, but I think encouraging people maybe.
Yes, this is why I asked you to please remind me, because in Matlab, what you're going to want to do is open, so you go to the code, and there's a whole bunch of files, right? And so the file that you want to run is hcalcml.m. I knew I'd forget that. So if you open that up, can actually do this in parallel. So if you open that up, this will prompt Matlab, and hopefully your license is in order. That's why we make these GUIs as standalone, because Matlab is a proprietary language, but it's very good at the matrix math that we need to do all of the calculations. So that's why we use it. So yeah, hcalc.ml.m. And the way you run it is you just press this big green arrow right here, run. And it might ask you to change the folder. That just means you're in the wrong directory, but it's totally fine. Just change the folder and it will open up the exact same thing that I just opened up. But now this is being run in Matlab and not in, not just standalone on your computer. So yeah, just open up hcalc.ml.m and press the big green run button. I'm gonna hide that.
I have a quick question about which data set to use. My computer was trying to find, it was trying to open everything.
Sure.
Do I go into HCalc ML data reduction? Is that the one?
Yeah, I'll go through
yeah,
it
I guess
again.
that's what we're doing. Sorry.
Yeah, I'll go through it again, and it's totally fine to just load it again and again. HCalc ML doesn't mind. So go into the short course materials, input data sets, the data reduction. And there are two different data sets if there's time permitting that we will look at. But select the 120 and select the entire folder instead of navigating in. So if you navigate all the way in, go back one and just select the folder and press open. And
Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. And you should see the path populate here. It's a really long path in my case. So yeah, and all you have to do to make the data reduction go is press reduce data. And you should see a wait bar pop up. Again, if something just completely crashes and burns, I will be around for lunch and we can hammer out some of these more technical issues. But yeah, the main concern is if I'm going too fast. And so it might take a minute depending on your machine. It's always the moment of truth in these short courses. Is the thing gonna work? And cool, so I'm gonna pause here for a minute and talk about this a little bit, but I'm not gonna do any clicking right now, or too much clicking right now. So if your machine is kind of pending, if it's stuck on the wait bar, just give it a moment and it should crunch through the numbers. The amount of calculations, it's a bit, so it's because we're taking raw data straight from the mass spectrometer and going through to basically publishable results in that one step of clicking on reduce data. And as that's running for people, maybe this is a good time for me to show what the data actually looks like. So this is a paper that we just, I think it's in press right now, but this is what the data actually looks like. So we have different isotopes, right, that we're measuring. So 238, 232, George walked you through all this fun stuff. And time resolved means we're actually just, we turn on the multi-collector and we say, hey, we want you to collect these different masses, all of these ones, all important 204, of course. And then we set up the laser we tell the laser, hey, go here, 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 here. And we set up dozens, hundreds, sometimes thousands of analyses. And the laser will start firing. It'll fire for a while and stop. It'll go, fire a while and stop. And so on. So that's why it's called time resolved, because the data reduction is actually going in and it's finding where that started and then where it stopped. So that's why we're calling it time resolved analysis. And that's what this data is here. So I'm going to press on and start going through these different panels. I'll take it one panel at a time. And again, slow me down if it's going too fast. Sarah, you don't look too concerned there, so I'm gonna go ahead and move on. Okay, so George talked about fractionation correction. so the fractionation correction is one of the most important things we do because as mentioned, when you measure something on your say $1 million mass spec or however much it costed, it doesn't give you the right answer, right? And so we have to correct using standards, and for laser ablation ICP-MS, we use sample standard bracketing. And that's what's shown here in this first panel in the top left. And by default, it shows the 206, 238 fractionation. And you can look at the 206, 207, and you should expect this to be a little bit flatter because 206 and 207, those masses are very close to one another, you know, good friends, right? And so they're not going to fractionate very differently. They're going to fractionate about the same. Whereas 238 and 206, so uranium way up here and lead way down here, this is the one that is really the, call it the problem child for fractionation. It's more challenging. And 208, 232, so the, you know, we're looking at zircon, not monazite. So it's going to be really weird sometimes, but like George mentioned, we're not going to use this in any of the calculations to calculate the date that we're interested in. I should mention that all of these tools, all these little windows here, they're all interactive. So in the top left here, you should see a little hand, maybe a magnifying glass, a little plus sign with a piece of paper next to it. If you click on the magnifying glass with the plus and click and drag, you can actually zoom in on any of these plots. And this really shows you what's happening with the sample standard bracketing. So the blue diamonds here, that's when we lased a zircon that's a standard. Then we typically go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in between of unknowns. And then we analyze another standard, and we do this through the session. And so here, number 70, that was the 70th zircon that we analyzed, and it was an unknown, and it's bracketed by these two standards. In the standards, we use Fish Canyon Tough. I believe George still has a garage full of it, which is a fun story. We don't have time for that. But so FC1 is a beautiful standard, definitely one of the most reproducible out there. Yeah, okay, so that's sample standard bracketing. If you want to zoom out, you can click on the magnifying glass with the minus and just double click and it'll kind of zoom you back out. I'm gonna move my zoom window over there so I can keep an eye on Sarah. She's saying, hey, stop. Okay, so we mentioned filtering and best age transition and uncertainty, all of these things that are potentially bad news, but we can deal with in the reduction. And we like to deal with things in a very objective way. We want everything to be as objective and as transparent as possible. You know, you don't want to go through and pick your favorite age because it's going to support your favorite hypothesis or something like that. Like, no way, we're doing science here. We got to be objective. And one of the ways the main way we deal with call it filtering out, called bad data, is we will set these filters on the top here. So it's going to be a little small on my screen, but you could probably see it better on your own if you have this running. Say you want to filter on a specific uncertainty. Say, okay, well, I want 238 or 206, 238 ages only less than 10% uncertainty. Or say you want to set that a little higher. I want a looser filter. You can change this on the fly. And if you change it, then just click on re-reduce data, and it will apply that filter to your data. There were a couple of questions on discordance. So 600 million years. There's a great question. Why do we set this discordance filter at 600 million years? Well, we actually don't apply it to anything younger because remember the accuracy and precision gets exponentially worse as you head toward younger and younger ages, and so you can't really rely on the 206, 207 age once you get younger than that. And in turn, discordance really isn't going to tell you nearly as much. In fact, sometimes you can't even calculate a 6-7 age because the transcendental function can't iterate down and land on an appropriate solution. So we set this at 600. Best age, George talked about this. So where do we set that transition? 900 is our default, I think, in both laboratories. And remember, there's a global lull. Whatever was going on paleogeographically, there's just not a lot of igneous activity happening at 900. So it's a nice transition in that kind of the bad news window that George mentioned between 900 and about 1.5 billion years old. And there are a variety of other filters that we can play with here. So uranium concentration, you don't want things that are super, super hot, like lots of uranium. 6.4, this has to do with the how you make that common lead correction, but I'm not going to go into that too much, just for the sake of time. And at the end of the day, all of these filters are applied every time you click on reduce data. So if you want to change them, you just got to reduce it again. Okay, so moving over to this panel, this is a general kind of quality control. All of these are quality control plots, but really this is the one that it's going to be pretty informative in terms of how your run is going. And so here we have a concordia of all of the standards, but these are the standards that we normalized to, or corrected to, in other words. So this isn't as informative as if, say, we analyze some zircons we do know the age of, but we treat them as unknowns, and we call those secondaries. And so this is really tells you how well you're doing. Say, well, we know that these zircons are 419 million years old that we're analyzing, but we're not normalizing or correcting to those. So how good are we doing? It's basically, in my opinion, it's one of the best checks during a measurement session or after. You can also look at your unknowns. So in blue will be you're accepted based on these filters, and the red will be rejected. So let's go grab this magnifying glass again and play around with this plot here. So you notice this guy way out here, just a little bit discordant, right? So you can zoom in on him like he's just hanging out there all by himself. So definitely filtered out. You can zoom in and take a look at how your analyses are doing. And this is a beautiful sample, right? Only a few rejected from this filtering. And there are some other plots. You can look at only the accepted. You can look at only the rejected here. So you got some rejected analyses here for a variety of reasons. You can also plot age versus uranium concentration. That might be informative if you want to start thinking about age and geochemistry. Uranium thorium, so if you're looking for metamorphic versus igneous, like George talked about. So there's a lot of different ways you can interrogate your data. Okay, so let's go sample by sample. So for this run, we analyzed 120 unknowns. This is a list box of everything that was run. It's basically the names of everything in this fractionation plot, just vertically instead of horizontally. So we started off with 5 standards, as we often do, and usually these are FC1 standards. They're beautiful most of the time. So you start ablating that zircon there for 10 seconds, and then you wait 10 seconds and you start ablating, and then you go down into the zircon, and then the laser turns off. And this is one of those analyses, again, from this time-resolved data. So the data reduction chopped it off here, and we're looking at one of these at a time. So each of these is an individual zircon. And you can click through, and most of these, this was a great run, right? There's some weird stuff there. This is a log plot, so that's why you're seeing this kind of jump up and down, because log of 0 does some funny things. So you can turn this log plot off and make this linear. And this is what's actually measured on the multi-collector. Okay, that's not in counts per second there, but anyways. And you could look at the different isotopes that you're measuring, click them on and off. This is all, again, this type of reduction. The reason we built it in this interface is because it's very interactive. So it's been a fun teaching tool we could have more people in the lab than we can right now. If you go down the list box, you'll notice that some of these are red, and these are the rejected or filtered analyses. So this one, I think this was the one that was flying off in the middle of nowhere. This was that old and discordant analysis. So that's rejected. It'll tell you why right here. And again, this is all based on these filters. So if we go down, there's a couple of other zircons that just didn't behave for the analysis. So reverse discordance. So here's your Concordia line, and we're on the other side of it, kind of the no-go zone, not possible on Earth zone. And so most of these were just discordant, but if you wanted to keep those ages, I would recommend, well, maybe you loosen up this discordance filter. So reverse discordance, it'll cut it off from 10%, and positive would be 20. So left and right side of the Concordia line. And if you really want to accept it, this would be a bit subjective, but you can do them one by one. I wouldn't recommend that because now you're cherry picking a little bit, right? Say like, I want that one, but I don't want that one. So it's not objective anymore. So I would caution against that. And there's a better way to do that, which I'll go over in a second, if you do have a lot of filtered analyses. Move my zoom window again, and let's head over here. This is, well, I mentioned this briefly. This is a Concordia for the individual analysis. It's really not terribly informative when it's all by itself, right? You want to see this in context. So what we're actually building right now is we're going to put a little thumbnail of the CL image in there of the zircon that you actually ablated. So you can see like, oh, that was kind of a crummy looking zircon, or it had a lot of cracks. So we're building that in right now. So this plot right here will be replaced soon with a little thumbnail of whatever analysis you actually did. Okay, so bottom right, this is, most of what we do is tetrahedral zircon work. And so we want to look at age distributions. And as George mentioned, a lot of discussion in the community, back and forth in the literature, what's the best to use? Sarah's advocating for histograms. I completely agree. I think they're a fantastic way to look at the data. But maybe you're a PDP kind of person. You say, hey, you know what, this is how I've always done it. That's fine. If you're KDE and you've been talking to Peter Vermeesh and he said, this is the way to do it. You say, okay, well, maybe that's a good way. I encourage you all to read the literature. We've included, there's a lot of it in the recent years. We've included a folder on the Google Drive that has the pertinent literature for these arguments for or against. I kind of like to plot them all, including the histogram. I think it's incredibly informative. It makes for a little bit busier of a plot, but it's manageable, right? And so actually that's a nice little segue into what I was going to talk about next, which is you can actually, in any of these plots, you can export them. So say you did want that individual Concordia, you can save that. Or if you did want that individual distribution plot, you can save these as vector editable images. So EPS is a good way to do it. I'm going to call it test. And Mac doesn't like it when I put it there, so I'm going to put it on my desktop and save this. And then we can minimize that. In this test, we can now open this in Adobe Illustrator with any of these plots. I like to use RGB. I think there's a little bit more control there, but yeah, so now you have a vector editable image. Usually it's grouped in some way or another, but now you can start to change the colors, do whatever you want, change the axes, make them bigger, smaller. So you have that straight out of the GeoCalc software. Okay, so here's the distribution though, and you say, okay, well, I have that, I have the ages, and here's how many were accepted. So what you really want to do now is save it. And we save it in 3 different ways. Save session will actually save this Matlab instance, so you can reload it later on and see where you left off. I'm not going to do that today, for the sake of time. You can go in and save a detailed sheet. And so I'm going to call this detailed. And again, send it to the desktop. And then I'm going to save a data table. So just underneath that, data table. Head to the desktop and save that. And I'm going to go and show you what's in each of these and talk a little bit about them. Okay, did they make it? Yeah, so let's start with the detail. And this gets back to what I was talking about with the filtering here. So again, I strongly advise against just cherry picking your data and just picking the ones you like. But if there are a lot of rejected analyses, it's good to go into the detailed table because this is a representation of everything that you ran. So every row here is an analysis with its individual concentrations and counts per second for the different isotopes, the different slopes as you went down hole into the zircon, the ratios, ages, everything, filtered, unfiltered. And finally, at the end of the day, you have your ages. And it'll also tell you what was rejected and why. So discordant, reverse discordant. So this is a better way to look at your data. If, instead of just saying, you know, I like that age, I want to keep that, you might want to go in and look at the detailed sheet. But what most people want is they want a data table that's a little bit more simplified. So here it always kind of, so we have George's references and that takes that second column and makes it huge. So you might have to drag that over. So if you're not seeing data, it's because you're just zoom out of your sheet a little bit and you'll be able to drag this column over. And we'll come back to this in just a minute, but basically this is all of your accepted analyses based on the filtering that you did. So we have around 120, 117, something like that. So perfect number for if you're in 2004 and you want 117 analyses. Included in here is your external or systematic uncertainty. This is not included in your individual ages. And we do that for a number of reasons that I'm not going to go into detail here, but basically you have 1 sigma uncertainties here for your individual analyses. So this is only your random or internal uncertainties at 1 sigma, and then you have your 2 sigma external uncertainties. If anybody ever has questions about error propagation, feel free to reach out to me. I'm always happy to talk about statistics and error propagation. So let's save that. We're going to come back to this, but what I want to do now is I want to reduce a different data set. And I'm going to come back to this plot here. So we did this data set here. Each analysis takes about 30 seconds. And this is pretty traditional for most laser ablation labs around the country. But what we've done is we said, you know, we want to go faster so that we can generate more data in an efficient manner and in a cost-effective manner. And so what we've done recently is we started going faster. And so here's the same type of analysis, but now we're going at 300 analyses per hour. And so think about that. Now we can get much more data in the same amount of time. So instead of at 90 seconds, we have 3 analyses. We have, I don't know, whatever that comes out to, about 10 or so. It's like, okay, well, why stop there? Let's take it up to 600. And watching this run is actually kind of crazy to see. We have some cell phone videos that we've kind of taken. So this goes really fast. And so every 6 seconds, you get an analysis. You get an age, right? And so you're going super, super fast there. And so again, why stop there? How far can we push this? And it turns out this is as far as we can push it, 1,200 analyses per hour. So every 3 seconds, you generate an age. And of course, your counting statistics suffer here a bit. So the longer that you're on an analysis and the more data you have, the more ions you count, the better that accuracy and precision you're going to get, right? So there's a big trade-off. So if you're interested in the gory details, I've included our paper. It's a GGR paper that is, I think it's in press right now, but it has all of the fun different plots. And the one that I'll point you to that's probably the most important is Figure 5, where we compare everything to the different, to the TIMS ages. I'm not going to go into this in detail, but it really shows if that line right there in the middle is a perfect match to the TIMS age, this is how too young on the left or too right on the old you are for young standards versus old standards. If you have any questions about this, I'm going to stick around after this course is done. I'm happy to stick around for as long as people have questions, so we can get into that later. But let's go ahead and let's go to this analysis, this data set here, and let's take a look at it. And so we're going to go back to HCalcML. I'm going to select that folder. we can find it. So go back to my messy desktop. Again, it's in the input data sets. HCalc ML. And so that's what the 1200 is. So 120 versus 1200 analyses per hour. So go ahead and select that again. Remember to select the whole folder. If you go in, you can't do anything. So take the whole folder, press open, and press reduce data. And this one's probably going to take a little bit longer because we have an order of magnitude more analyses that we've analyzed here. Another moment of truth here. Every time we run these courses, like, is it gonna work? Okay, and say, okay, well, wow, that looks a little weird, right? And so I've included this data set on purpose because if you take, again, you can take these little tools up at the top right, or top left rather, you can zoom in and say, what the heck happened here? So this analysis, this was a standard, it's a little blue diamond. So what happened there, right? So you can zoom in on it, and this this purple box here, it's more of kind of a swath. This is the actual uncertainty that's propagated through and calculated and included in your systematic uncertainty. So if you left this in there, you would see that, wait, like, hey, my systematic uncertainty is going to be much higher. And that's reported up here. It's 1.35%. And again, you want to be, excuse me, objective about this. You don't want to go in and pick and choose which standards you keep and which ones you kick out the door. But you want to be objective. And we've included two different ways to do this. So up here in the top middle, where you have your different selections of standards to use, you can select the radio button here that says, yes, I want to reject outliers. And what that's going to do is it's going to say, okay, well, we're in 206, 238 land here. And so 6.8, let's take 5% from that median deviation. So if it's 5% like too high or 5% too low compared to the median of all of the standards you ran, kick it out and then do the data reduction. And then for 6.7, because there's typically less, there are fewer issues with 6.7 because those, again, those isotopes, those masses they're very close to each other and they behave very similarly. Usually less, there are fewer issues there. Alternatively, you can click on the 2 sigma. That'll take a 2 sigma uncertainty window of all of the standards that you ran and kick out the ones that fall outside that window. I'd recommend turning off the 2 sigma though and just go 5% deviation, because that will reject fewer analyses. So go ahead and click yes on the reject outliers, and then you'll need to reduce data again. This will take just a sec because it's a huge data set. But the funny thing is it's a huge data set, but it took the same amount of time to acquire as the smaller one that we looked at previously. Okay, looks like it liked that. And so here we go. So again, the session, although there's about 1,500 analyses, if you include the standards, the amount of time that's represented here is pretty much the same as that first analysis. And you can zoom in here, and we're doing exactly the same thing we've done before, right? So it looks just like it did before. These vertical bars are 2% uncertainty. And we say, I want to shoot a standard, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 unknowns, another standard. It's just happening a lot faster, right? It's just happening a lot faster for that analysis or for that measurement session. You can see here you have the same kind of quality control plots. Now you have a lot of standards. You can look at your secondaries. It says, whoa, that one, let's kick that one out, right? Because and there are just some default parameters in there to kick out the really bad ones. Yeah, you can click around and have fun with this data. The main thing that I want to drive home here is like, yes, we're going faster, more analyses are going to be rejected, right? Because you just don't have as much information about that grain. You've only been on it for really like 1 second for lasing it. And so you're going to lose a lot more. But in that time, you gain a lot more information about that sample. Now we have over 1,000 ages that passed those very same filters. Remember, we didn't change these filters. So we're still being completely objective here. And to show you the power of this, let's go ahead and export this plot. And if I remember to do so, I think I have the one from before. There we go. So there are the two. So this sample is the same sandstone sample. It's the same separate. In fact, it's the same mount that went into the laser ablation cell. But in 1 hour, we gathered this much information with about 117 dates, or this much information with over 1,000 dates. And you can start to see how different these look. And we'll look at, we did 8 different tests at different rates. And we'll look at that after lunch today, how different these samples look, all from the same sample from Henryville, Utah. I think I have it here. All of these things that I'm showing you are included in the, or will be included in the online Google Drive. And here we go. So 120 an hour. This is the top one is one session as a PDP, and reflected underneath it, the blue one is a different session, so a different measurement session. And we reflect these just to see how similar they look. I put in red KDEs just because, again, I like to look at everything. I've left off the histogram because these were getting pretty busy. So 120, 300, 600, and 1,200 analyses per hour. And you can see, to me, the major trade-off is really between 300 and 600 analyses per hour, because you're getting about 280 or 550 analyses. But again, these are all the same sample. Once you get about this many grains over 300, they really start to look the same. In fact, there are populations, or rather groups of ages that did not exist in this one before. So even the presence versus absence sometimes doesn't work when you have fewer ages, if they're this complex. If you just have a couple of age modes, I don't think I'd recommend going and analyzing 600 of those, especially if you know you're going to get a single unimode. Definitely, probably not the best use of those funds. The one we're looking at is at 1,200 analyses per hour. And you see this one's really filled in. But again, that major trade-off is here. I'm going to close that out. Let's save this one as well. So let's call it deep, or I'm just going to save the data table. Call it 1,200. Why not? Send it to the desktop. And now what I want to do is maybe pause there just for a minute. And I want to take the last 15 minutes or so, and I want to take the data that we just reduced and upload it to a global geochronology database. So maybe Sarah, if people have been chatting away in the chat function, if there's any burning questions, or feel free to dive in.
I think we're generally good on the chat function. I think the issues that people are having are probably ones that need to be worked through over lunch.
Okay. Yeah, I will be here. I'm gonna run out and make a small peanut butter sandwich, but I'll be right back for that. So I'll be here for lunch for anybody who's either having technical issues or just kind of wants to chat about stuff if no technical issues present themselves.
Kurt, there was a question about the downhole correction. How you do that downhole correction. I don't know if you want to talk about that for a sec.
Yeah, sure. So for that, I'm going to go back to it's just easier with a visual. So I'm going to go back and re-reduce the 120 an hour data set, because it'll only take a sec. So reduce that. While that's reducing, so for the longer duration, you can imagine you're drilling deeper and deeper and deeper down into that zircon, right? And so the fractionation correction is, of course, an issue that the deeper you go into the zircon, the more fractionation you're going to have. Mostly because of the uranium-238 fractionation. The leads don't seem to care nearly as much. So what we've done, actually initially in the testing of this, so here if we go on a linear scale, in magenta here, this highest peak, or this highest, these intensities, this is the uranium. So basically uranium's going down, and it's not making it to the mass spec as much the deeper you go into the zircon. So you can imagine your 206, 238, your denominator is getting smaller. That means your ratio is going to actually go up. And so that's what George showed earlier with that linear fit. In early testing of these rapid acquisition methods, we tried our best to include a downhole fractionation correction, but it turns out if you're only on the grain for 1 second and you're blading at 7 hertz, there is no real consistent fractionation downhole. In fact, you'll actually get really weird looking slopes and they will just give you the wrong ages. And we know they're the wrong ages because we tested this all with standard materials that lots of researchers have standardized over the years. And so we actually don't include a downhole correction for anything faster than the 120 an hour or 30 seconds per analysis. And for the 30 second per analysis, we give the option up here. So if you click on downhole corrected, it will apply it. And if you turn that off, it will also apply it. And a fun exercise, if folks have nothing to do over lunch, is to compare the two and see how different the results are. So it's a great way to interrogate your data. So what we actually do for the faster analyses in lieu of downhole correction, is we take the sum of the total counts. So we take all of the 206s and all of the 238s, and we just take that ratio, and it, based on our testing of standards from all over the world, of all different ages, that seems to do the best for going very fast. But it's a judgment call. It's one of these decisions that a researcher has to make if you're going at these slower rates and you're doing, say, an igneous sample. I encourage people to look at both. So we don't want to police anybody here with KDE, PDP, or anything like that. Or we give everybody the option, or we try to give all of the options for researchers to do, and we try to inform them on how to do it. It's kind of what this is all about here. So yeah, you have the option to downhole correct or not. Cool. Okay, so I'm going to minimize this and stop looking at it. And this. Let's go to the first data table, or either one really. It doesn't matter. There, one's going to have a lot of data, and one's going to have a little bit of data. Let's go with the big one. Why not? To be fun. You'll notice, if you remember, the systematic uncertainty was a little bit lower for the smaller data set, and that's to be expected, right? Because we are on each individual analysis a lot more time for the slower data set, so the systematic uncertainty is going to be lower. But we have tons of data now, right? We have over 1,000 ages that characterize this distribution. So what we want to do is load this to a global geochronology database. So I'm going to try to zoom in here a little bit. Give me just a sec. Hopefully you can see that. Before we load it to a database, we need to add some what is termed metadata. So this is the data here in the spreadsheet. The metadata, things like what's the stratigraphic formation, where did this come from, what was the analysis purpose. These are all metadata. So if you fill out the metadata, and I'll point out the critical ones to do, but you'll need to upload this to geochron.org. But if you fill out this metadata, then it is directly uploadable to that global database. So I'm going to call this awesome sample. And stratigraphic formation doesn't really matter. Let's just call it Sarah formation. Age can be a number. I think it's actually Cretaceous or something. So it can be a number. It can be the Pleistocene, whatever it actually is. I'm making this up as I go along. I know it's a sandstone. The critical ones are going to be latitude, longitude. So I'm going to pick a place in the world where I know there's no data. So 12.3456 and 123.4567. That's going to put us in Southeast Asia. There's just not a lot of detrital zircon data down there that's been uploaded to this site. If you have Google Earth on your machine, or if you have some coordinates, maybe from your field area, I would encourage you to put those in. They have to be in decimal degrees. That's the only thing you really need to know. So, and then, because we're going to go find this sample after we're done uploading it. For analysis purpose, type in detrital zircon. And this is a critical one. If don't put in DZ or anything like that, it needs to be detrital zircon because that's the search interface that we'll use. I'm going to put my name And aliquot reference is if it's published. It's in press, I guess, so sure. But the critical ones are detrital zircon, sample name, and coordinates. So if you get those filled out, then you're good. You could save this. And again, if I'm going a little quick here, it's because I'm running low on time. I have about 10 minutes. I should have mentioned early on, I completely forgot. All of this is in this hands-on guide that's also that's included in the Google Drive. I'm kind of giving a loose version of what we're going over here, but all of this is written out with a little bit more extra information about what the filters are, what they mean. So there's a lot of information here, but I thought it'd be more fun to just go through this with a fluid way. Okay, so let's go to geochron.org. So it's one of my favorite places to go. So it's bookmarked here. This is a database for geochronology data from all over the world. And what we're going to do is click on contribute data. And we're going to load the data we just reduced to the database. And so don't click on the big zircon here, the LaserChron logo. That'll take you to the LaserChron website. But click on this link right here, HCalcML manual upload. And that'll take you to this. It's going to say, hey, no, not everybody's allowed in. We need a Geopass. If you don't have a Geopass, I encourage you to make your own and start loading your own data. You can use the template that's that we have on that we have here. There's the template that we're actually using right now. So you can put your data in there. It doesn't have to come from LaserChron, but you can use that template and it'll work. And the Geopass, again, I encourage you to create your own later if you don't already have one. And if you do, yeah, please upload data to this database. It's all better when it's out there, right? But for this exercise, please, please, please use mine because this data I'm going to want to delete after this is done. So the password, so there's my email address. I have my actual account I'm not going to give you because I keep my own data on there. This is an extra account that I use just for this short course. So sundell@email.arizona.edu. And can anybody guess the password? IRC zircon. So all lowercase. Zircon is the password. Again, the email address is sundell@email.arizona.edu. And please use this because I have to go in after the fact and delete off the data that we upload. Otherwise, there's 20, 50, however many versions are going to land on this website. If you're afraid of dealing with the Geopass, it takes about 30 seconds if you don't have one. So just, it's really easy. And it should take you to this page here. And so it says, okay, we'll upload the HCalcML data or using this template. So it doesn't have to come out of HCalcML. I took data that I generated from University of Houston, put it in this format, uploaded it, and said, great, now it's on there. So again, I encourage everybody to put their published data or unpublished on this database because you can actually embargo it. So let's go choose that file. So click on choose file. Oh, which one did we do? We did this one, right? Data table 1200. I actually added my metadata to. Click open. And here's the embargoing that I mentioned just a second ago. It says, okay, do you want to overwrite it? And so, well, no, I know I haven't uploaded this yet. So no, it doesn't really matter. But public or private? So here's a situation where you've just acquired your data and you're about to write your master's thesis, or you're going to write some kind of publication on this. You're like, you know what? I'm not ready for the world to see it. You say, well, I don't want it to be public. You click on no. I'm going to click on yes because, well, I'm going to delete this data afterward anyways. And actually it is published. But a lot of cases, you want to click no. And then once you publish it, this can actually serve as your data repository later on. So when GSA says, hey, wait, where's your data at? You say, oh, it's on geochron.org already. And I will unembargo it right when we're done. And you don't have to deal with it, which is a really nice way to go. So we encourage all users after they generate their data, put it on geochron.org, make it private if you want until you publish it. If you don't care, make it public. In any case, it's easier to have this data at hand, the metadata at hand, at this stage rather than 2 years later when you're trying to dig it out from your field book or something like I had to do. So yeah, let's click on yes and submit it. This is another one of those moments of truth right here. And it should say success. Yes, everything went well. If it didn't, then perhaps your metadata was input to your spreadsheet incorrectly. And again, I'll be here during lunch. And I can go over that with anybody who wants, or just do the whole thing over again. I'm happy to do whatever. But yeah, it has all of your metadata. And then remember, we did the huge one. So we're going to have so many analyses here. And it just goes on and on and on and on. And so what I want to do now is see if we can go find it, or you can go find your own sample. If say you put in your field coordinates for your own field area, or if you put in Montreal, because that's all we all wish we were right now. But to search, you can either go directly to the Geochron site. So if you're just on Geochron, the main page, you can search data there. Another way is to say, okay, I want to go in this horizontal bar here and say, not general search, but I want detrital search. This is where most of the data exists on the database to date. And you should get a map. And I would be patient with the map because there's a lot of information on this map. So I would click carefully, but you can click and drag. Let's see if my sample made it. So awesome sample, I even might have spelled awesome correctly. So you can see there's tons of data. North America has lots and lots of data. So if you're interested in a particular area, you can zoom in and out using tools here, or you can do some exploratory analysis, which I enjoyed doing. Just take a bunch of data and see what you learn from it in a particular time interval. So you have lots of search tools up here. So Geochron's pretty great. I want to click on my awesome sample here, and you can see if you click on it, it will give you some general details. So the stratigraphic age, this comes straight from my metadata. The oldest age fraction is about 3.5 billion. And the youngest, if you're interested in maximum depositional age, that's the youngest single date. You can view the sample details, and all of this is pretty interactive. So if you get lost, you can always just click around until you find it. You're not going to break anything. In Geochron, they won't let you. And there you go. So this is exactly what we uploaded, right? You can download what you uploaded. So here's the download sample file here. Data table, see, I already have one on my desktop, so I'm going to call this downloaded. And then you head to your desktop, and it should pop up. Moments of truth, right? If I put that in the right place. Let's try it again. Oh, I put it in preview. Whoops. Come on, Mac. Let's call it _D. There it goes. Yeah, so here's our data table. And if you open it up, it is the exact file that you uploaded. Even with, I had this highlighted before. It's exactly what you uploaded. So if you wanted to change something like, no, I did some more analyses during my publication, and the reviewer said that these ages shouldn't be in there, yada, yada, whatever happens, it's not set in stone. You can go back into your management, so data management. And here you see there's only one in here. That means not very many people have made it to this stage, so a little scary for me right now. But if you wanted to delete or view or edit, you can do that as you so please. So hopefully during lunch, we'll get some more uploaded onto this, this database here. So I'm going to delete my sample. So hopefully people are successful in getting theirs uploaded. Okay, that was a lot, folks. Hopefully people were able to, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Hopefully people were able to follow along. If not, if I went a little too fast, I apologize.